Welcome back, adventurer. This week's creatures have been described as a witch who loves to do the washing, the biggest owl, and a very hungry reindeer. So come, pull up a stool at Creature Tavern. Hello again, adventurer. You didn't leave your flat cap here on your last visit, did you? We've got one that started to whisper some rather unsettling things to the regulars. No? Shoot. Well, while the staff bit on who's sticking it on their head, let me and you get into the first creature for the week, the Bean Nighe, from Scottish folklore. In Scottish Gaelic, Bean Nighe translates to washerwoman or laundress, but she's also known to go by the night washerwoman, washer at the ford, and the Nighe. That means little washer. And with that last name, there are a couple of variants. You've got the Nighe Nahath, little washer of the ford, or Nighe Behig Abron, which means little washer of the sorrow. She's a mighty grim figure, widely feared as a harbinger of death and a messenger from the other world. She belongs to a family of spirits known as Ban Sith, a star-studded group of cryptids which include the Gorgon Witch and the more famous Banshee. Seems this is one gang of ghouls with connections. Tradition spins tales that the Bean Nighe is the restless spirit of a woman who died during childbirth, now caught between the lands of the living and the dead, unable to cross over, forever to remain bound to her labours. Washing clothes, until the day her life would naturally have ended, had death not intervened. Now the suspected oldest record of a Bean Nighe comes from the Mermaid of Loch Slin stories, from 1742. Back then, women would give birth roughly around the age of 20, with a life expectancy of around 60. Do take that with a pinch of salt, mind. But if we go off this rough tavern math, that's 40 years of laundry duty. It doesn't sound the worst, but back then those would have been the prime years of life. To help, let's do a little more tavern math and look at this through a modern lens. Today, childbirth tends to occur at the age of 30, with folks living far, far longer, up to the ripe old age of 90. Now how does 60 years of laundry sound? In my opinion, this is a fate worse than death. Her appearance varies according to who you chat with, but nearly every account marks her as unsettling or deformed in some way. On the Isles of Mull and Tiree, she's said to have unusually long breasts that keep getting in the way when she performs her eternal labour. Folks say she simply throws them over her shoulders, letting them hang down her back while she washes. On the Isle of Skye, the Bean Nighe is depicted as a squat, pitiful figure resembling a small child. While in Perthshire, she's described as small, rotund, and dressed in green. In all versions, she bears physical abnormalities that set her apart from the living washerwomen. Sometimes it's protruding front teeth or red webbed feet. But the most widely reported description is that of a tall, malnourished woman with thin patchy hair, a shriveled posture, and a face dominated by a hooked nose with just the one large nostril. If you track your eyes down her malnourished looking form, you'll notice thin, wiry arms that end in rough, calloused hands, telling the story of her countless years spent washing the endless pile of garments. Sightings have come from all over Scotland. We just mentioned Perthshire. That's quite a beautiful patch of central Scotland, littered with mountains and lochs. And we also mentioned the Isle of Mull, Skye, and Tiree. These are all parts of the Inner Hebrides, with the Isle of Mull sitting just off the west coast, near Auburn, the Isle of Skye being more northwestern, and the Isle of Tiree is southwest of the Isle of Mull. Good luck keeping track of all that. Within these lands, Bean Nighe are said to haunt lonely places beside desolate streams, ponds, fords or lochs, most commonly during dusk or nightfall, so make sure you've got a lantern handy if you're looking for the washerwoman. As we briefly mentioned earlier, the key feature of a Bean Nighe is her unending laundry, but it's not just any old laundry. Folks say she specifically washes blood from the garments of those fated to die. That's right, she's able to see the future in her suds, and those whose clothing she washes are destined for sudden, and more often than not, violent death. She's also rumoured to sing a low mournful dirge while she carries out her duties. This soapy superpower has been witnessed on full display in one of the most noteworthy encounters from the Highlands, tied to the collapse of Fern Abbey's roof in 1742. In this story, sometimes referred to as the Mermaid of Loch Slin, a maiden from Cromarty was walking along the loch one Sabbath morning when she turned a corner and saw a tall woman standing knee-deep in the water. The woman was knocking clothes against a stone with a bludgeon, and nearby, more than 30 smocks and shirts lay on a bleaching green. If you're unfamiliar with a bleaching green, that's a grassy area, usually beside a river, used to bleach washed clothes in the sun. Each article of clothing was smeared with blood, and shortly afterward, the roof of Fern Abbey fell during a service, burying the congregation. 36 souls were lost according to the legend, though some records put that number closer to 50. It's also said she possesses a vast, possibly infinite knowledge, and if you manage to speak with her, she'll happily reveal not only the identity of the doomed individual whose clothes she's washing, but also answer any question put to her. In some cases, she's rumoured to grant wishes too, but you only get the 3, so use them wisely. And before you go off skipping by a loch in hope of these 3 wishes, just know it ain't as easy as walking up and tapping her on the shoulder. Gaining these favours demands cunning, courage, and adherence to an ancient and very specific ritual. If you lay eyes on her, you mustn't turn away. Instead, approach silently from behind, so she's not alerted to your presence. Then, and here's where things get a little weird, legends say you should seize one of her long breasts, pop it in your mouth, and claim to be her foster child. She'll then be bound to impart whatever knowledge you seek. If the garments in her hands belong to an enemy, you can let her carry on, sealing your foe's fate. On the other hand, if they belong to yourself or a loved one, you can stop her from completing her task and avert death entirely. You'll have the power of life and death in the palm of your hand, and a long, cold breast resting in your mouth. Different regions preserve variations on this dangerous encounter. On the Isle of Skye, capturing her ensures she'll answer all your questions, but you must truthfully respond to hers in return. And if the Bean Nighe sees you first, well, she will rob you of the use of your limbs. Some say this happens instantly, as though afflicted by some invisible curse, while others swear blind she'll approach you and whip your arms and legs with her wet linens. And in the Perthshire tradition, the tactics are a lot simpler. All you got to do is position yourself between her and the stream, and you'll secure her capture. It's definitely easier, but in my humble tavern opinion, a hell of a lot more boring too. Regardless of the locale, the Bean Nighe's intense focus on her work can sometimes be her weakness. So absorbed is she in the washing and the rhythm of her song that a careful, stealthy hunter may seize her before she reacts. Should they succeed, she'll reveal the name of the one soon to die, and if the tales are to be believed, bestow up to 3 wishes. On these isles, such fortune was rare and extraordinary, that a person who enjoyed unusual success was often said to have got the better of the Bean Nighe. Honestly, I'm not sure why I'd need any wards to protect against this haunted washer, but alas, I've done my research, and got a good few tips for you. If a Bean Nighe is causing you grief, maybe everyone except yourselves getting a wish, and you've just had enough. The legend states you can send her to her final rest by cleaning all the clothes she left behind in life. But if you don't mind the washer, you've just buggered up the approach and now you've got one advancing with her linens in hand. Then I suggest you run. But since no one ever does, there might be another power at play here. Maybe paralysis through her stare. Maybe there's an intense fear, or maybe everyone's just confused by this approaching figure. If you find yourself frozen, then you're screwed. Unless you've got a party member handy to drag you back. Now this Bean Nighe cryptid's given me a thought. I wonder if I can pie this hat off on one. Why hello there, listener. Hello there? Yeah, we'll stick with that. Fancy seeing you again. Thanks for listening to episode 16 of Creature Tavern. Hope this one's not too much of a spicy meatball for you. Or maybe it's not spicy enough. In which case I hope this one's a perfectly spiced meatball for you. Let me know your meatball spice levels by posting about the show using the hashtag Creature Tavern on X or Blue Sky. Not only will I have some very interesting reading, but there's a chance your name will appear on the show. You could be a mildly spiced meatball, or perhaps a super double X spicy meatball. Either way, your name will go down in history as featuring as a meatball. And if you're joining us on YouTube, leave a comment and you too could feature as a meatball. If you're enjoying all this meatball talk, then do help the show by telling a friend. Just make sure to mention that we do more than talk about meatballs. Alright, that's enough meatball talk for now. Let's get you back to the tavern. Well, I sent a pot wash off with the goods, and he's not come back. The bloody hat has. I'll send some more stuff out to fetch him. And while they're doing that, let's carry on with our second creature for the week. The Owlman from Cornish folklore. Going by the name Owlman, the Cornish Owlman, or the Owlman of Mornan, this feathery figure has perched itself in the uneasy place between monster and a birder's dream. Described as an owl-humanoid hybrid, it straddles the line between the average barn owl and something altogether more man-shaped. Now you may be familiar with the famous 1976 sighting, but did you know the first actual recorded encounter is claimed to have occurred much earlier, in 1926. But in truth, it was the 1976 event that cemented the Owlman's place in Cornish legend. So let's tell it. On the 17th of April 1976, two young girls visiting Mornan claimed to have seen a large winged creature hovering above the tower of St. Mornan at St. Stephen's Church. They described it as a terrifying, feathered birdman. The tale goes on that what they saw was so incredibly alarming, it led their father to immediately end the holiday. And that strange summer continued when on the 3rd of July, two campers near the same churchyard encountered what they described as Big Owl, with pointed ears and standing as tall as a man. It had glowing red eyes and black, pincer-like claws. Features more alien than anything normally found in the British countryside. Sporadic sightings followed in 1978, 1979, 1989 and 1995. Then in the year 2000, locals whispered of a loud owl-adjacent sound echoing through the Mewlin churchyard at night. Now I've had the usual skeptics claim these witnesses saw nothing more than a chubby barn owl. But the collective testimony and sketches tell the true tale. If you ever get the chance, I'd recommend getting your eyes over these sketches, as they're remarkably consistent with certain features. The Owlman's often drawn at 5 foot 9 inches, with a body cloaked in black and silvery grey feathers. Its legs are most often shown with a human-like shape and knees that bend forward. The one drawing depicts them more bird-like, still man-sized, but bending backwards. And they always end in dark talons. Its arms, when spread fingertip to fingertip, also measuring around 5 foot 9 inches. And they ain't bare, but wrapped in thick, feathered wings that run down to the creature's waist. And these wings extend beyond the length of its arms, giving a complete wingspan of between 6 foot 10 inches and 8 feet, depending on who you ask. And at the ends of these arms are leathery, bony talons, sharp and wholly predatory. Its head, though, is perhaps the most distressing feature. In some depictions, it sits atop the shoulders in a human-like fashion. In others, it sits low, almost as if the neck's been removed, giving this haunting hooter a more owly silhouette. And what is every single owl known to possess? That's right, a beak. Well, that's not always present on this feathery fiend. Some drawings replace it with a wide black mouth. Some preserve the beak, alongside grotesquely large eyes, not suited for any living bird. Roughly 6 inches in diameter. Imagine holding a pair of saucers to your face, and you'll have the scale. The sheer size and forward-facing placement of these eyes gives the Owlman a fixed, unblinking stare. One that folks say feels more like you're being measured than merely observed. Knowing all that, I bet you can see why the Owlman of Morning remains one of Cornwall's most enduring and unsettling legends. To find this cryptid, there's just the one spot. Only place it's ever been seen is in the village of Morning, Cornwall, UK. Specifically, St. Stephen's Church. I'd recommend you start there. The Owlman is a curious creature with many talents deemed ordinary for birds, yet unsettling for birdmans. For example, although it's never been directly observed, drawings of the Owlman with its head set low on its shoulders suggest it possesses the ability to rotate its head up to 270 degrees. Much like that of your non-human sized owls. This is likely made possible by additional neck vertebrae and specialised blood vessels. And unsurprisingly, the Owlman is a deeply nocturnal cryptid. Its presence fell only under the Cape of Darkness. Every recorded encounter has occurred at night, strongly hinting at a mastery of low-light vision, comparable to that of a true owl. This exceptional sight is likely the result of a dense concentration of rod cells in the retina, enabling him to navigate and stalk in near complete darkness. It's also suspected that those large forward-facing eyes granted binocular vision, allowing for precise depth perception and the ability to detect even the faintest movements over a great distance. In flight, the Owlman is impressively silent for his size. Experts say we've got the serrated feathers along the leading edge of his wings to thank for that. Seems they scatter air currents and reduce turbulence, granting this stealthy skybird the ability to close a canny distance without so much as a whispered fart. This silence, paired with what I suspect to be powerful flight muscles, allows the Owlman sudden bursts of speed and the ability to perform sharp, agile turns in the air, movements well suited for evasion, or striking swiftly at potential prey. So what if you end up being prey, I hear you ask? Well, witness accounts, though rare, suggest its talons possess enough crushing strength to carry away a child or even a large dog. So it'll hurt you. But a well put together cat like yourself ain't got nothing to fear from this one. But you should probably know its eating habits. Just in case. Well, they remain a complete mystery. The owl head suggests it could swallow prey whole, but its humanoid body raises uncertainty around whether it regurgitates the fur and bone or fully digests them. If you happen to find the answer, please do let me know. And to help know when he's close, folk say encounters are usually foreshadowed by an intense hissing sound. Your instinct will tell you to check the ground, but if you're in Cornwall, you best check the skies. Sometimes this is followed by the owlman's loud piercing hoot, a call said to carry throughout the night, much like a foghorn, only sounding completely different. In the aftermath of a visit, onlookers reported a strange static noise emanating from the trees, lingering as the residue of your encounter. And despite its preference for solitude, encounters with the creature suggest an unnerving fixation on pursuing children. So travel with a couple kids if you're itching for a meet and greet with the Owlman of Cornwall. To handle an encounter with the unofficial King of Owls, you really don't need much. Seriously. The main issue with this feathery fella is achieving an encounter in the first place. But let's say you've lucked out, and you're about to find out how this cryptid feeds. Well, from all the stories I read, the Owlman's easily spooked. Almost every tale has him scaring children, only for the children to scare him off with their screams. With that in mind, I'd suggest you make all sorts of bloody sounds if you need an escape. And I'd also suggest bringing along a couple torches or lanterns. You see, since he's a creature of the night and got those plates he calls eyes set in his head, I bet you can blind the beast for a quick getaway. But if you left your light source at home and your throat's a little sore from last night's singing, then sudden or erratic movement is also said to scare the birdie boy off. You know what they say? When in doubt, bust a move. And lastly, if you'd prefer to avoid the encounter entirely, then travel by day. And when you gotta set up camp, make sure it's well lit. Dot a few torches around the perimeter. That's said to be enough to protect you from ever entering the Owlman's sights. Now before we get on with our last creature, I'm just gonna try burn this hat. The whispers are starting to get a little threatening. Welcome back to the break room, listener. If you're enjoying your time here, why not click that lovely little subscribe button wherever you're listening to us? Each time you do, a tear spills from my eyes. And who doesn't enjoy making someone cry? You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever octave owls make their nests. Just search for Creature Tavern. And while you're in a generous mood, give us a review. That's your time to shine. Voice your thoughts, opinions, what monsters you might like to see next, or just smash the keys. Every little helps. And that's it for this break. You'll suffer no more interruptions today, at least not from this show. So sit back, relax, and let's get back to the tavern. Well, the burning didn't help. In fact, it seemed to enjoy the flames. Looks like I'm stuck with this possessed piece of headwear for now. While I come to terms with this new tavern resident, let's crack on with our last creature for the week, the Wendigo, from Algonquian folklore. The Wendigo, also spelled Windigo or Windago, is a fearsome figure from Algonquin folklore, feared across North America. Known as a creature of terror or evil spirit, the Wendigo is a malevolent, cannibalistic, supernatural being, often called a winter cannibal monster. One translation of the name titles the beast Evil That Devours, giving a pretty good glimpse into what the Wendigo symbolises: greed, selfishness, and an insatiable, all-consuming hunger. The most widely told path to transformation is easier than you might think. Usually, it's a human facing starvation during a brutal winter, left with no other option but to commit the ultimate taboo and consume human flesh. This act poisons the soul, warping the body into that of a Wendigo. In other accounts, the creature is an evil spirit that takes root within those who exhibit greed, selfishness, or cannibalistic intent. And in others, the change can come without a single bite of man meat. Here, an excessive hunger for power, or even prolonged exposure to a Wendigo's presence, can be enough to trigger the metamorphosis. Its legend comes from the traditions of the Ojibwe, Saulteaux, Cree, Naskapi, and Innu peoples, with the creature's earliest known written mentions dating back to 1636, in a report from French missionary Paul Lejeune. In this account, a woman of the Algonquin people warned of an Atchen. Atchen here is believed to be a French transcribed form of an Algonquin word for Wendigo. The Atchen had devoured some tribal members and would eat a great many more of them if he were not called elsewhere. The Wendigo holds deep-rooted ties to the north, winter, cold, famine, and starvation, as these were the harsh conditions in which its origins took shape. And fun fact, the creature's name is used by psychiatrists to describe a form of psychosis aptly named Wendigo psychosis. It's a disorder marked by an intense craving for human flesh and is linked to a sense of impending doom. But what does the Wendigo look like? I'm sure you've already got an image in your head, but when I was doing my research, it seems the Wendigo comes with two faces. We've got the human Wendigo. This one retains the outline of the person, but they've grown thin, spindly, and unnaturally tall. Some say the very image of starvation. A fella named Basil H. Johnson, an Ojibwe teacher and scholar from Ontario, provides one of the most detailed descriptions of this classic Wendigo. He says, "The Wendigo was gaunt to the point of emaciation. Its desiccated skin pulled tightly over its bones, with its bones pushing out against its skin. Its complexion, the ash grey of death, and its eyes pushed back deep into their sockets. The Wendigo looked like a gaunt skeleton, recently disinterred from the grave. What lips it had were tattered and bloody, unclean, and suffering from separation of the flesh. The Wendigo gave off a strange and eerie odour of decay and decomposition, of death and corruption." The other face being the deer-skulled Wendigo, perhaps the more recognisable build. Described as a gaunt, towering humanoid, said to stand anywhere from 8 to 13 feet tall. Its head, is the skull of a stag, mounted atop a skeletal neck, and crowned with what folks tell me are massive asymmetrical antlers, stretching 1 to 2 meters across. Unlike the antlers of living deer, these never seem to shed. The posture is often hunched, its skin corpse pale or ash grey, and stretched tight over its frame. The eye sockets are empty of all, except for a faint glow of ghostly light that's red, yellow, or white, depending on who you ask. And in stark contrast to the herbivore animal whose skull it wears, the Wendigo's jaws bristle with carnivorous teeth, like jagged molars and elongated canines, clearly built for tearing at flesh. The Wendigo's arms of both are grotesquely long, and ending in claws, or in some descriptions, these claws are actually just the exposed finger bones, chipped and shaved to a point after countless hunts. The legs, however, are unique to each form. For the classic type, they are very much human, if a little grey and gaunt. And on the deer, they're bent backwards, much like the hind legs of a living deer. This setup allows the Wendigo to both sprint on all fours or stalk its prey upright, should it decide to take things a little slow. Legends place Wendigo in remote, cold regions far from human settlements, where survival really ain't the easiest. Associating them with the forests of eastern Canada, the Great Lakes region, and the Great Plains of the US and Canada. And if you're looking for the best time to find one, they're said to be especially frequent during the winter months. This is likely when people will starve and turn to cannibalism, likely resulting in the appearance of new Wendigo every time the seasons run deathly cold. Now, from those descriptions, it's pretty obvious that the Wendigo resembles that of a beast, but they are something far more complex. They appear monstrous, yes, but they retain all the human capacities of thought, planning, reasoning, and speech. And these retained traits make it quite the intelligent predator. One that's said to even threaten or taunt its prospective victims. I've even had accounts of them using tools to aid them in their hunt. The approach of a Wendigo is not always seen as well, but there will be signs. A foul stench, or a sudden unseasonable chill. Some claim that even speaking its name can summon one. And I guess we're testing that theory out today. And we shouldn't have to wait long. If a Wendigo fancies, it can easily close in on a target with supernatural speed. Or maybe it'll stalk around the tavern with absolute silence. Or even employ its most unnerving ability, where it can mimic the voice of others, in an effort to lure us out alone and deeper into the wide open wilderness. Next time you hear a familiar voice in the hours of night, someone you know, but maybe weren't expecting, you best peek out your window, lest you end up dinner for the beast with an endless hunger. Physically, the Wendigo is rather formidable. Folks who've set eyes on one in action describe exceptionally sharp eyesight, the ability to detect the faintest heartbeat or wisp of breath, a keen sense of smell, and strength that dwarfs that of any human. The deer-skulled variants are also said to have unnaturally long strides, with tracks reported up to 15 feet apart, allowing them to cover impressive ground in moments. And regardless of what version you encounter, it's said they can sprint at around 25 to 30 miles per hour for long stretches. To put that into perspective, the current world record for human speed averages out at about 23 miles per hour. And that's for only 100 meters. And when not on the run, it's said Wendigo can endure walking for long periods of time. Some even call them the tireless travellers, capable of enduring long treks in the most punishing of winters, moving with ease through deep snow and across ice. But the defining curse, feature, whatever you want to call it, of a Wendigo, is that ravenous hunger. And it's said whenever it consumes, it grows in proportion to its meal, which in turn deepens its hunger. The larger it becomes, the more ravenous it grows, creating a vicious cycle of endless consumption. And because of this habit, many unexplained disappearances in the frozen north were blamed on these relentless hunters. Even heard from a few folks that say as long as a Wendigo consumes flesh, they can't die, essentially making them immortal. Whether one chooses to rush you down, shadow your step for days, or draw you in with a stolen voice. All these talents combined truly make the Wendigo the Swiss Army knife of cryptids. So what can you do against this terrifying multi-tool? Well, it turns out there's actually quite ways to survive and avoid encounters entirely. Let's begin with a tale of the kidnapped child. The tale speaks of an Indian child stolen by a Wendigo. But because the boy was too thin, the Wendigo didn't eat him right away. Instead, he travelled with the child, waiting for it to fatten up. He periodically cut the child's hand with a knife to check if it was fat enough, but he never seemed to get there. One day, the pair came across an Indian village, so the Wendigo sent the boy in for food to finally fatten him up. Seems the boy was a smart one though, as he told the villagers about the Wendigo sat at their border, and he showed them the cut on his hand as proof. The Wendigo, seemingly concerned with how long the boy was taking, started calling to him, saying hurry up, and don't tell lies. Now if any villagers didn't believe the boy, they certainly did now, as the Wendigo wasn't exactly whispering these calls. So the villagers banded together, followed the boy over, and cut the Wendigo's legs off, before heading back to their homes with the child. After a while, they returned to check if the creature was dead, but instead they found it sucking the marrow from his own legs. Deciding this wasn't a good enough fate for the Wendigo, the villagers cut him into pieces, finally ending his eternal hunger. From this story we can see a couple of ways in which to survive and handle an encounter with a Wendigo. For one, if you're on the thinner side, you'll get to go on a buddy adventure across the realm with the Wendigo. You're definitely a hostage here, and you've got to be careful not to be on this road trip for too long. But with a little luck and wit, you can escape with just a scarred hand. It also seems Wendigos can be distracted with their own limbs, but considering how emaciated they are, you're likely going to have to slice the limb clean off, like in the story. And it seems they can die. If you've got enough bodies, and the creature's distracted with some other food, you can get in there and slice them up. But as with many myths, different folk say different things. There are some legends that say the only true way to kill a Wendigo is by burning one. And these legends are sometimes more specific, saying you in fact need to cut the heart out and burn that directly. And while the story from earlier gave no detail on the weapons used, there are some folk that say only a weapon of pure silver or iron is fit for the killing task. Or if you'd like to avoid an encounter entirely, then it's quite simple. Just don't eat people. And stay well away from those who do. Cannibalism is the #1 reason for a rising Wendigo birth rate. And it doesn't hurt to be a little generous from time to time. And with that, we're finished with our last creature for the week. We've learned that a spirit's nipple can grant a wish. If you hear a hiss, sometimes it's an owl. And that if you're greedy with the gravy, you'll be pouring it over human flesh before you know it. Now that bell means it's last call here at Creature Tavern. So grab yourself one more drink for the road. And until next time, tread carefully, adventurer. You never know when you might wander into the weird